Hi, I'm David and welcome to Leisure Bit, and today I'm going to do an introduction to some of the work I'm going to be doing to install a lithium battery in the van and just give you a little bit of background of what's coming up there, the different jobs involved and a little bit more around lithium batteries. So let's get cracking. So first of all, I'm going to start with why lithium. So the van comes with a regular kind of lead acid type battery. I think it's an AGM battery actually, and that's fine for short term when you're not on hookup. And quite a lot of people have put a couple of batteries on, so added two of them. A little tip on that is if you are installing two batteries, just make sure they're of the same age and condition. That stops you getting where one of them's pulling the other one down, and that applies to all batteries really. You know, whether it's ones you're putting in a torch or whether it's lithium, AGM, lead acid, whatever it happens to be. It's a perfectly good solution that just before we start off, if you are happy enough having a couple of days off grid, you're not a big heavy user of power, and that's absolutely perfect for a lot of people. But as I've said before, I'm going down the I'm not a lot of people. So I wanted something that allows me to go off grid but still run some things, such as being able to make some hot water or a coffee with the coffee maker, being able to put something in the microwave, for example, or being able to run any other kind of mains appliance as required within reason. So one of the steps I'm going to do is fit an inverter system with this, which we'll cover in a separate video, but that's part of the reason for it. And the lithium battery I've actually gone for is a 460 amp hour. It's quite a new one out. It has the same form factor as a 300 amp hour, but there's more energy density in the cells. So a typical traditional leisure battery has an amp hour anywhere between 60 but typically about 80 to 120 amp hour, although you can get bigger ones than that and, you know, occasionally smaller ones. And that gives you, though, without damaging the battery, a continuous kind of rundown rate to about 50% of that. So if it's let's, for round figures, let's say in a 100 amp hour battery, it'll give you 50 amp hours of safe usable capacity. With a lithium battery, you can go a lot further, so you're getting pretty much all, or at least 90% typically, of the usable capacity. So if you compare, let's say, a 100 amp hour lead acid battery with a 200 amp hour lithium battery, just for comparative purposes, out of the 200 amp hour lithium battery you would get around 180 amp hours usable. You can push them further, but this is making sure we don't kind of damage the batteries by taking them too far and discharging them beyond what's reasonably expected. And some of the lithium batteries you can discharge to 100% the rated capacity, but I think the typical rating is 90%. So in comparison then, we've got 50 amp hours here, and then we've got 180 amp hours. And the form factor, i.e. the size of those batteries, isn't much different. And the weight of the batteries isn't much different, but you've got phenomenally more power available. There's a couple of downsides to lithium that, whilst traditional batteries do suffer this, they suffer it to far less an extent. So the first one is, most lithium batteries, because of the chemistry involved, cannot be charged below freezing. And typically on your BMS you'll set it a little bit higher just to make sure where you're measuring the temperature and where the battery is, it is definitely above 0 degrees centigrade or freezing point. And the reason for that is, below freezing it causes a chemical reaction which effectively damages the battery. A lot of them come with a heating system built in, which basically keeps the temperature up to avoid that happening. And the majority of them with a battery management system, unless you're building your own lithium battery with cells, and in which case it's worth considering doing this, come with a temperature management system as part of the battery management system to stop you charging it at a range where it has caused damage to the cell. And from a discharge perspective, discharging below -20 degrees C can also cause some damage to the battery. But the biggest challenge, certainly in the UK, is just watching you don't charge it if it's below freezing, because it can create irreversible damage to the cells there. There's a lot more information online on this. This is just some information I learned as when I go through things, I tend to research them and try and get some understanding. So to the best of my knowledge, that's my kind of, in simple terms, advice with lithium. So just make sure you protect your battery, because they're too expensive to inadvertently destroy, and it would be soul destroying, I think, if for a simple thing like just creating a bit of charging when it was below freezing causing an issue. So anyway, back to the reason of why. So I wanted the freedom to be able to go places for a few days, maybe even up to a week, without worrying about power. And when we had the previous motorhome, we got in a situation where a couple of times the battery got run right down when we were away and weren't on hookup. It was typically where we'd go camping and there was no hookup available, and you got the usual problem. Everything starts bipping, and your heating stops working, and that fridge stops working, and all those good things, or bad things at the time when you're there, and then you're suddenly very cold. But the battery just didn't last if you've got things on. You know, you start having to compromise what you're doing in order to keep heating on. You're always worried about switching lights off and things like that, which from an environmental and energy point of view is obviously a really good thing. But what you want is the ability to use the things when you want them. So I wanted something that could give us, if I want to go to a rally or something over a long weekend where there's no hookups, I want to be comfortable in the knowledge that I've got enough capacity there to be able to just crack on as normal and not worry about it. So that's why I went for that battery. I was going to go for the 300 amp hour one, or somewhere between 200 and 300 amp hour, because I worked out that's probably for when I'll use it off hookup all that I really needed. But I just so happened when I went to place the order, because I'd held off rather than bought it a year in advance like a lot of the other stuff I've done. I'd held off till a couple of weeks ago. So what that means now is there was a new technology of battery out that has more energy density, and that's how I've gone for the 460 amp hour. So remember, I was looking probably 250 to 300 amp hour is what I reckoned I would need. And bear in mind, the fridges in the eldest CV range run on battery as well, so you've got pretty much everything drawing down as you go. You can't kind of offset that to gas. There's only heating and cooking that's running on gas. Plus I wanted an inverter, so I get all the luxuries. So with that gives me then a really good safety margin, so I don't have to worry and don't have to compromise with what I'm doing. I've got a solar panel on the roof which will charge up. Obviously if you discharge it quite a lot, it'll take quite a while to charge up, but that then's quite environmentally friendly in terms of topping that up. And also it gives that bigger buffer then, so you're actually storing energy that you can get topped up with solar without worrying about having it plugged into the mains hookup, for example, to keep things topped up. It just gives me more freedom, and it allows me to use things without worrying so much about them, and that's based on past experience. And also the protection on the battery means, via the BMS, means that I don't have to worry about over discharge and things like that and damaging the battery, which happened previously. And it only happened on a couple of occasions, and it couldn't be helped. There was no hookup, and literally the battery had run down, and it just was never the same again. And I'd just like to say thank you to Graham from Wizard in the Wild, because I had a chat with him when we were at CV Owners Group meet. Poppy's channel there, definitely worth checking out Graham and Ellie's channel there, because he had a good chat with him on lithium batteries, because it's one thing I didn't kind of race into and get like some of the other things that you'll have seen. And Graham's got 2 batteries, and I couldn't work out whether I wanted 1 or 2, and had a bit of a chat now, but I've been thinking about it all the way along, and it actually so happens the one that I bought actually had everything I needed on it in a single battery, because one of the key things I wanted was enough power to drive the inverter, and the one I've ordered's got a 250 amp continuous battery management system output. Which is perfect, because that's all the power I'll need to drive into the inverter, but it's also in a single cell. And one of the things when you've got 2, it's just keeping everything balanced up, as I touched on earlier. So thanks, Graham, I really appreciated your thoughts and advice there, because as I put a lot of thought into lithium, because it's expensive. You're looking at to put the system in by the time you got the inverters and things at a couple of grand, so a lot of money, and a lot of money in the battery as well, to make sure you make the right choice. So make sure you do your research. The one I've bought might not be right for you. It seems right for what I want to do with it, but there's lots of options, and you don't have to go so big, of course. Just a simple replacement one of similar capacity gives you pretty much double the usable capacity anyway. For the rest of these videos, so we're about to wrap up this one, you'll be pleased to hear. This was by means of an introduction, and I've got the following videos coming up in the series. So the first one, we're going to start with installing an MPPT solar controller, which is compatible with lithium. Then we're actually going to install, just besides that, the ability to send some charge to the vehicle battery, so that anything, you know, alarms, all of that kind of good stuff, doesn't run the vehicle battery down, so that we send a bit of charge that way. And in this case, that's through a separate device. The one that's installed at the moment does both through a kind of split percentage going into each one, but I'm installing a different gadget to do that. So that'll help keep the vehicle battery in good condition as well, and topped up. So that's the second video on that one. The third video then, I'm going to install a replacement charger and power supply for the van, because the one installed's not really suitable for lithium, and you want to get the most out of it. It's pointless spending significant money on a battery and not having the right gear to run it. We're then going to look at installing the battery itself, and the work involved in doing that, because it's a different shape, so I just need to do a little bit of re-engineering under this seat where the battery lives in this particular model, but just going to box it in, make sure we've got the right protection on it, and get it connected up, and then following that, the DC to DC converter, which is basically feeding from the alternator, similar to how a split charge relay worked in some models. This is effectively, because it's an automatic and because it's got start stop, we need to use a DC to DC converter, and to be fair, because it's got lithium, you need to use a DC to DC converter. So we'll have a look at that as well, and that makes sure that when we're driving, we're charging up the batteries as well. And then finally, we're going to have a look at the inverter and how we set that up. So I've got that in a series, and we're going to run those one a week, just to run through the story of lithium. And then the final one, we'll just kind of bring it all together into a summary. So I just thought I'd start with an introduction, let you know what's happening, and then we've got those follow-on videos from there. If you're watching this after we've published them, I'll just keep updating the description so you've got links to them, so you can jump to the relevant video of interest. I say some of this might be of no interest because you're quite happy with what you've got. or certain bits of it might be of interest, so just make sure that you can jump to the relevant bit and skip the bits that aren't of interest. And that kind of tells the story then of the installation of lithium batteries, the new solar controller, new power supply and charger, battery to battery charging when we're driving along, the inverter and how we can use power when we're not on hookup, and then finally bringing it all together, not forgetting the bit to make sure that we keep the van battery topped up as well, and use some of this energy we're getting from the sun to keep it topped up, albeit I don't know where the sun is today, it's bucketing down. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this series and you hope find it interesting. Appreciate it's not for everyone, this one, but I hope for those that are interested in doing it, you find it helpful. And please leave any comments and feedback as we go. I'd love to know how we could do it better, any other hints and tips, or any other thoughts before I've started as well. Please drop them in the comments below. Anything you've learnt when you've done it yourself. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye!